a stress level that increases their male energies or their testosterone levels are healthy and don't need any of this nonsense that is being promoted by medical science. So most of the medical knowledge that is being put out there and most of the information is, if you notice in all of the programs that come on during the day, are all focused on women, makeovers or women's breast cancers, ovarian cancers, and everything is pretty much marketed to women. But we very rarely see things dealing with men, except, of course, around the prostate. But men have also a certain cyclic cosmic connection that they are related to as well. But because we do not seek out authoritative information in order to guide ourselves by, we are less prone to going to see the doctor. Not because, well, we ain't worried about it, or I'm scared of them, or this. It's just the nature of the male not to be caught up in all of that. You could see that basic difference in the way that women and men shop. Men go in, they want a pair of socks, they get a pair of socks, and they're out of there. Whereas women, it's more of the ritual of shopping rather than the end result of shopping. So because of those natures and those practical ways that we look at different things differently, women are more susceptible to be consumers of medical protocols and medical products than men are. But as a result, since men are not being taught about themselves as well, we too fall prey because the information we need is not being put out there at the same level as it's being put out for women, even though it is faulty. But women are getting more information about themselves and men less information about themselves because men don't really go hunting for information, quote-unquote, about themselves. So premature ejaculation, bringing it back full circle, is actually another symptom of an overall complex of causes that are related to the dysfunctioning of the masculine principle. And I would like to go over a few things, and if you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask now, then we can field that and then go further into the answers as we go along.
Okay, let me ask you real quick then, Dr. Valentine. And this is coming from a book called The Tao of Health, Sex and Longevity by Daniel Reed. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like basically he's a Taoist. And on page 294 he says, men who ejaculate once or more on a daily basis may eventually lose their minds, since 20% of male semen is composed of cerebral spinal fluid. Frequent ejaculation thus causes a chronic drain of the vital fluids that the brain and spine require to function properly. The resulting deficiency of cerebral spinal fluid can cause such increasingly common conditions as premature senility, inability to concentrate, chronic depression, loss of sexual drive, and a host of other related problems. Could you just comment on such a statement?
Oh, by all means. In my book, The Wounded Womb, I make it very clear that men who masturbate frequently are those men who actually fill the institutions, the insane asylums.
Wow.
Now, that little adage that says don't play with it or don't, masturbate too much or you might go crazy has its root in a truth. Also, that is something that is not prevalent is the fact that, or is not taught to brothers, is the fact that most domestic violence that takes place between men and women is based upon the men having a higher estrogenic charge than his masculine energy. And most of the men carrying out the brutality against women have more feminine energies in them than they do masculine. Why is that? Well, if you understand the science of electromagnetism, harmony, as well as polarity, it isn't the opposites that are at loggerheads with one another. It's those who are alike. In fact, if you take the polarity of a poles of a horseshoe magnet and try to put them together at the same polarities, you'll see that they kind of reject one another. Well, if men are masturbating and losing their hormonal integrity through loss of sperm, which he's correctly saying is your cerebral spinal fluid, or as the essential essence of your blood concentrated. It is the potassium ions and actually the sun energy concentrated in your testicles that are the carriers of life. Once you are constantly losing that, you lose brain capacity. You lose the ability of the brain to be renourished by this concentration of light, since the brain works as a light filter for intelligence and consciousness. And what happens is, once you have lost your sperm and all of the very essential vital nutrients that are in that sperm that feeds the brain, that is fed by the pituitary into the hypothalamus and so forth, you lose your higher testosterone integrity, or your androsterone integrity. And what happens is your accumulation of estrogen becomes higher. Why? Because the more you masturbate, the weaker your liver becomes. And the liver is essential in processing excess estrogen out of the body of the male. So if he is constantly masturbating, he is dysfunctioning the liver, thus causing problems for the liver to get rid of whatever estrogen that the body makes or even accumulates because of the kinds of toxicities we have in our environment and in the foods that we eat, which we'll go into later. All of this causes him, his masculine nature to be subverted, and so the feminine nature in his proximity begins to irritate him, because the feminine nature within him is resisted or is repulsed by the feminine nature in his queen. So there is an automatic thing that we don't see as part of this so-called domestic problem issue, is that what we have is the mixture of apples and oranges. In other words, we have apples with orange seeds and oranges with apple seeds. And this disparity has caused problems in relationships, whereas we don't know why. So yes, the author is very astute when he says that the male sperm is essentially his own brain fluid, and it's the liquefied essential essence of his intelligence, as well as his manhood.
So individually, then we are just out of balance. We may be too young or too yin, or too masculine or too feminine. There's no real balance, you're saying, in a situation like that.
And the balance comes because the masculine and feminine polarities are constructed within to maintain a certain behavioral balance, as well as nutritional balance, as well as an earth and cosmic balance, so that the man is whole as who he is in relationship to the female, and the female is whole as to who she is in relationship to the male. But today, because of the poisoning of our environment, because of the way that we have destroyed the food supply, the excess struggles and things that we do every day to raise the stress levels, the feminine principle especially is the one who feels the greatest impact first because of her delicate nature. And she is more prone to the changes of an environment that is being toxified or with high levels of toxins and stress. She is more prone to show the effects of that stress in her body because she is more in tune to environmental changes.
You know, I've read several different books, and what they listed is ejaculation schedule, so to speak. And what they were saying is that sometimes a male who is 20 years old may be ejaculating twice a day, and a 30-year-old may be doing it once a day. And they were saying that basically these kinds of ejaculation schedules are for the inferior man. From your experience and information, Dr. Valentine, is there any, I guess you could say, schedule that you could think of in terms of, giving some of our listeners a guide out there? Because most people